I'm Jeremiah Murphy. Welcome to Mariculture Minute, a podcast about seaweed, shellfish, and salmon in Alaska. Today, we're talking with Angie Bowers. Professor Bowers teaches at the University of Alaska Southeast Sitka. Angie teaches all about salmon, seaweed, and shellfish. And before entering the halls of academia, Angie had a rich career working at salmon hatcheries. Hatchery work is a mix of science, labor, and maritime skills. All fascinating things to talk about on their own, but some hatcheries are pretty remote. And that's what I want to talk about. What's it like to work in the thick of the wild, the middle of nowhere? Is it scary? What do you do when you're not working? Before we jump in, I want to introduce some vocab for today. One term, salmon enhancement. Salmon hatcheries in Alaska raise salmon from little baby eggs to when they're big enough to swim out to the ocean. Hatchery salmon help keep the salmon in the ocean at a healthy number for fishing. So fishing boats, and even just people fishing on their own to feed their families or for sport, can catch salmon every year. That's the goal of salmon enhancement. Alaskan hatcheries enhance the overall salmon population in the ocean. And also, I want to add a geography note. We'll be talking about Baranof Island in southeast Alaska. It's where I am now, in Sitka, the city of Sitka. But Sitka is a tiny dot on Baranof. Baranof has a coastline of around 600 miles, and Sitka takes up only maybe 14 miles of that. So we have a little context. Let's talk to Angie. My first question is, what is the most remote hatchery you've ever worked at?
Hidden Falls. So I worked at Hidden Falls Hatchery, came up here in 2006 to work there. It's a hatchery located on the east side of Baranof Island.
So to give people kind of an idea of like how remote it was, like how could you get there?
So we got back and forth to town on a float plane. So there's no roads to there. If you take a boat, if you're on, depends on what kind of boat and how fast it's going. If you have a very fast boat, you could do it in probably 4 hours or so. On a big, slow boat, it takes all day.
Do you remember like the first time you arrived there? Do you remember what your impression was?
Absolutely, yeah. I came to Sitka in February and had no idea what I was getting myself into. We stayed at the NSRRA bunkhouse for a couple of days, waiting for the float plane to fly, and got all of our rain gear and everything we needed to go out. And the day we left was February, so it was kind of cold, but it was this bluebird, still calm, absolutely beautiful day. So when you fly to Hidden Falls on a float plane, if it's a very nice day, you can go over the top, so straight across Baranof Island. Otherwise, they follow the waterway up and around. And so we got to go up and over, which is like one of the most glorious things you've ever seen. Snow-capped mountains, and it's really, really wonderful. And then I'd never been on a float plane before. We just touched down right in the bay at the hatchery, pull up to the dock, and there was just all these really nice people there waiting for us, and in paradise, I felt like.
Do you remember what was like the first wildlife you saw when you got there?
So, I mean, there's eagles and things and seals and animals all over. I had kind of a crazy experience with a deer right after I got there. I was hiking, just kind of following a game trail, and saw this deer, and it just kind of like totally accepted the fact that I was there and did not run away. And my mind was blown. I was like, wait, animals aren't afraid of people here? You know, it turns out they are, but in that case, she wasn't. So it was a pretty cool experience. But yeah, the wildlife if you're from like the Midwest, I mean, you just every day you're in awe of what you see. Like I soon after I arrived too, I was out feeding the fish at the net pens, and had an eagle swoop down very close to my head and grab a seagull out of the air, and then
Wow,
that was shocking as well. So
So when that happened, like, did you hear like the wings go by your ears?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was shocking, actually.
So you actually did you feel the feathers of the eagle?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
I mean, it didn't touch me, but like it was enough to feel like the breeze of the incident. There weren't any bears out and about when I first got there, so that was interesting to see as they start to show up a little bit later in the spring. So getting used to just living with bears in your yard essentially all the time takes a little bit to get used to, but
yeah. So what are some of the things you did when bears were around? Like, I guess, like, how did you react?
well, for the most part, the bears, when I was out there, were pretty well behaved. Like, they would stay on the far side of the weir. So it was mostly just watching them. At night, there was kind of an understanding between the people and the bears. At night, they had free roam range. And so when you're out at night, like, you would sometimes going back and forth to each other's houses, you would see them, and you were just always kind of ready to see them. There was never any negative interactions. I had one where it kind of like buffed at me, like warned me that like it wasn't very happy where I was walking. I was just on my way home, and that was scary. I always had my dog on a leash at night. We would carry a shotgun if we were out doing rounds and checking on the hatchery. So it's kind of like there was just a mutual respect at that site, and that changes with time, and I think how people deal with them. Like, we've had to shoot rubber bullets at bears to get them away during the day, and kind of it's like there's some training that goes on to get to that mutual respect.
I was going to ask, did you know how to fire a shotgun before you got there?
No. I learned there. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I learned a ton going there. It was just like so many new experiences and things, and I was really fortunate there to be there. When I think every remote hatchery has cycles of like who's working there, what the manager is like, and I was there in a time period where we just had a really tight-knit crew, good manager. It was we all worked really well together. It was a great place to be.
So you're at the hatchery. How many hours of the day are you actually like doing hatchery stuff? How many hours are you working?
Most of the year you do a regular 40-hour-a-week schedule, and it'll be staggered so that the hatchery always has coverage and somebody to feed. So you might have weekends where there's like a lighter crew. And then there's times of the year when you put in extra hours, extra days, like when you're ponding, and that's when you're getting all the baby fish out of the incubators. And sometimes there'd be a time crunch. There's a boat waiting to move them to different projects or something, or they're just used up their yolk sac and it's time to get them out. Or during spawning, like you spawn while there's fish to spawn, and that can make for some really long days. But all the rest of the year is mostly a regular 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30 or whatever the schedule is.
And there's no commute.
Right.
So imagine you have a fair amount of free time.
Yeah.
What do you do?
That's actually the best, in my opinion, the best part about living remote is there's not a lot of busy work, like you don't have to go to the grocery store. Your groceries show up on a float plane. You don't have to go to meetings or gatherings that you feel obligated to go to. It's kind of like your time is your time, and weather kind of dictates a lot of that in the season. We spent a lot of time just walking in the woods. I learned a lot about gathering mushrooms and foraging and berry picking and fishing and boating and just going out and watching whales. And it's and the hatchery that I was at, I think they all differ a little bit. We had a rec boat, so you would just make sure you had good shore contact, said you where you're going, when you're going to be back, take a radio, and then you had that freedom to go explore other bays, and we had limits of how far we could go. But
so when you're exploring, you're like the only person within like in the wild. Like, was that scary
often
at all?
I mean, if it's summertime, there's a lot of fishermen out there and people out and about. Certain times of the year, though, there's probably not anybody coming by anytime soon. So thinking back, I probably wasn't as prepared often going out as I should have been. Like, I've learned a lot now, learned a lot about cold water survival and just being out there and having backups for communication and things like that I probably should have known more about at that time, but...
So 2006, you said, right?
Yeah.
So were smartphones?
No.
No, so...
I
what
think,
did you
well,
have?
actually, I think people had them. And actually, I had my very first cell phone, but it wasn't a smartphone by any means. And it didn't work out there.
Yeah.
So we just had a satellite phone.
Oh.
And so communication was all by VHF radio.
Oh, okay. So, like, no Wi-Fi either, right?
No,
So-
we had pretty slow internet.
Yeah, what'd you
and
do? Was there, like, a computer in, like, a shared room or something?
There was a shared computer in the bunkhouse, and people would, be like, no videos. We had limited bandwidth. So, be like, so-and-so got caught watching a video, used up all of our bandwidth, now we're out,
What did they watch? Do you remember?
I have no idea.
A movie trailer or something?
Yeah, you never know. And it was back, 20 years ago. Like, going out there and just, we had only a satellite phone to communicate with people outside of the hatchery. And we had email, but, that's not really how you communicate with your family and other people so much, at least back then. And so spending 3 years not talking on the phone made me very nervous about talking on the phone when I got back into, like, regular
Did you
life.
spend a lot of time on... I remember... Like, I don't see anybody talking on the phone anymore, but I remember when I was a kid, people would
Yeah, we
spend,
would
like,
talk-
their whole afternoon.
We would talk a lot on the phone,
Yeah.
and then after that time period, like, I still actually don't like talking on the phone. And I think people don't do that anymore anyway, but for me it was, I would get nervous, like, oh, no, I have to talk on the phone right now, which was it's weird. Like, remote life changes you in certain ways. I think there's just... you become accustomed to certain things. Like, when I first left the hatchery, or when we would come into town, shopping was very overwhelming for me. Like, you go to the store and be like, there's so many choices here. And sometimes it would be like, I'm just not going to get anything because I can't decide.
Yeah.
Eventually that goes away, but it's...
Were you able to, like, keep up? I don't like using this term outside world, but, like, how did you get, like, news? Did you watch TV shows? Were you see
Yeah,
movies?
like, we had TV.
Okay.
And we would get, you could watch the news. We didn't probably do a very good job keeping up with what was happening in the world, which was fine.
2006.
At that time.
Not much going on, right?
No.
If you think about...
It was like, one thing that really stands out is there was a presidential election and Barack Obama won.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that was big.
Yeah. Were you able to vote when you're out
Yep.
there?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
So I think we did vote by mail.
What were, like, holidays like? Like any Halloweens or Christmases or Thanksgiving?
Holidays were the best, actually, out there. Especially, like, Halloween, we would always find some costume. Just put whatever we had together to dress up. And then my friend and I every year would go trick-or-treat. And then people didn't have candy. They weren't ready necessarily for trick-or-treaters. We did have kids out there a couple of the years, like families.
Oh, wow.
So then people were a little bit more ready because they wanted to trick-or-treat too. We still trick-or-treated. But people would give you, like, a granola bar. We got some ammunition, just random whatever they had that they were going to share with us, they would give to us. One year, let's see, dressed up as, like, a zombie clown one year. It's just every year was kind of make do with whatever we have. And then other holidays, it would be whoever was there on site would get together for, like, Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter, whatever the holiday was, we would get together in the bunkhouse. Everybody would bring stuff.
Cool.
I remember one Thanksgiving, there wasn't a lot of, like, coordination or communication about who would bring what. And NSRRA would give all their employees a free turkey.
Ooh.
So I think we showed up and there was, like, no side dishes. We had, like, 3 turkeys and, like, 6 pies. So
Delicious.
it was fantastic.
Sounds great.
And then we had pie, like, we would have everyone would just come down and eat pie for the whole next week or something.
Was there any gardening or growing your own plant
Some people
foods
did
there?
some gardening. There was a woman out there who had some little garden beds. I think more gardening had happened kind of in the past, and maybe that happens out there now. One issue is like getting your stuff dug up and making sure that it's safe.
Okay.
Having some sort of like predator net on it or something. Yeah. There's just a lot of, but like bears will get into everything.
Yeah.
I remember once they had like the steps up to the duplex there. They had just like redone the steps and put like deck finishing on them, and that very same night bears just chewed it up like they liked the taste or smell of what was on there. They'll chew up gas cans. They would eat the seats of our four-wheelers.
Oh, wow.
So you leave anything out, and it's a good chance it might get munched on.
You mentioned some kids there. Do you know what kind of lives they like had in this remote
I think
hatchery?
great, actually. Yeah, I know before I got there, there's a family, they raise their kids all the way through, you know, they always lived at remote sites from Hidden Falls down to Port Armstrong, and just get homeschooled and live a very different life from your average American child, I would say, but I think it's not in a bad way. Like you're...
Do they wear shoes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
I think, well, maybe not always. I don't know. It's there's a lot of things you can step on around a hatchery site that you might cut your feet on, but
now working in a remote spot like that, is it a thing where kind of like friend groups like apply to work together, or is it like you kind of make your friends once you're there?
I think for the most part it was make your friends once you're there. I don't remember. I mean, sometimes they would hire like a couple that would come together. So, yeah, I got really lucky. My best friend to this day I met at Hidden Falls. So.
Did you work at any other remote spots with this friend?
No, she actually, when I first got there, was working down at Port Armstrong, and her partner was living at Hidden Falls, so she would come in between the two. And then she just moved back after doing that, I think, for one season. And, yeah, so I worked there, and then I actually, that was my only fully remote hatchery. Then I spent 7 years at MedVG Hatchery, which is, there's a road to town. It's beyond the locked gate, but you can get to town from that one. I still kind of lived a hermit lifestyle when I was out there, though. I would come to town once a week to get my groceries, and otherwise didn't come to town all that often for all the years I was out there.
So it sounds like you kind of like that remote.
I did, yeah, very
Do you
much.
feel like Hidden Falls kind of changed you in that way?
I don't know. I feel like I just took to it. Like, I think it's for some people, maybe not for others. Because some people get there and they're like, yeah, that was great for a while, but I'm ready to get back. And it's something that I feel like I've always kind of missed since moving to town.
Do some people get there and then, like, leave and be like, no?
Some people cannot handle
really?
it. Yeah. I mean, we had people just leave, like, not stay very long at all.
How would they? I mean, you have to, like, schedule a flight. I mean, so
yeah.
I guess
Also, I think the work's not for everyone. Maybe they could deal with the remote life, but then there's also, you're doing pretty hard manual labor and sometimes some pretty gross things, you know, like getting dead fish out of, you know, the lagoon.
Right.
And it smells terrible. And
still more fun than working on a spreadsheet.
Absolutely. Yeah. But not everybody feels that way.
Yeah. I was wondering, since this is kind of like an audio podcast, what were like the sounds at like nighttime? Do you remember, like, remote areas, we all have city sounds, no matter, like, even in this small town of Sitka, it sounds like a city, like people. What did it sound like at night in these remote areas?
Well, it's like at most hatcheries, I'm sure there's always water running. You know, there's ponds that are spilling, or like a fish ladder that's on, or at Hidden Falls there's a waterfall that's called Hidden Falls. It doesn't spill often in the wintertime. And then, so, like, for me, I was really surprised the day it occurred to me why it's called Hidden Falls, when the falls started flowing again. So, yeah, water sounds always. There's usually pumps of some sort running, so it's, like, never, like, you gotta kind of get away from the hatchery to find peace and quiet. So hatcheries are kind of loud. During the day, there's equipment running and backup, alarms, and sometimes like emergency water alarms going off, or each day in the morning and at night you would test the alarm system to make sure it's going on. So you would like a little reminder for what time it is if it's your day off. You're always aware of kind of what's happening at what part of the day. And Yeah, and then at night it would kind of be a little bit more quiet. Trying to think of like sounds. One story that comes to mind for sounds is I had a dog when I was out there, the best dog in the world. Like most people think of their dog, but he was fantastic. And he would like go to work with me every day, and we'd go to the back shed, and I would open the door, and he would run out into the round ponds. Because at one time probably he saw a mink back there, and he couldn't wait to finally get that mink. And so he did that for like 2 years before finally one day he did. He caught a mink.
Oh, wow.
And
So big for listeners, how big is a mink?
It's like a ferret sort of animal, so maybe like little bit bigger than a ferret.
18 inches?
Something like that. They're like furry. They have kind of a long rat sort of tail.
Sharp claws, too.
Yeah, and teeth. And he got this mink, and he was really proud of himself. And then I wasn't, because it had sprayed, and like you could smell, it's the kind of a musty, like stinky spray that it had. And so I disposed of the mink in the ocean, and then that night I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and I could hear a mink making the same sound that it made when my dog got it.
Oh, no.
And it was getting louder and louder and louder, and my dog is freaking out. Like I know what that sound is, and he's up at the window looking out. And so I got out of bed and I looked outside, and there was a bear with 2 cubs, and one of the cubs was carrying a mink and like playing with it.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't the same mink. Just coincidence that this all happened on the same day, and my dog was like, one, there's a bear outside. Also, it has a mink. He was going berserk. So.
Yeah, those are sounds you want to hear.
Yeah.
Would you give any advice to somebody working in a remote hatchery for like the first time, somebody getting ready to pack?
Yeah, you definitely want a lot. I mean, I'm sure you get help with that on your way, like advice on what to bring. Lots of warm clothes that are not cotton, things that wick moisture, layers of clothes, good boots, extra tufts for sure, wool socks, hats, lots of warm hats. Because no matter what time of the year it is, except for just like direct summer, all those things are necessary. For me, music was a really big, big thing.
What was it, CDs or
CDs,
MP3s?
yes. And I actually, so this is really dating me. MP3s were kind of new at that time. And I had bought myself an MP3 player, like put all this music on it. I was so excited. And then I left it in the rental car in Seattle.
Oh, no.
So I came without it.
Did you ever find it?
No, I called and nobody found it.
Oh,
but,
no.
So I got a Sirius radio. So I had satellite radio, CDs, and then put all I spent hours downloading all my CDs onto Apple Music, and then finally did get an MP3 player. And it's really cool. At that time, they had a library program where you could order books from the library. They would show up out at the hatchery in a big blue bag. It was like Christmas.
Would it come by plane?
Yep. Came with our mail on the float plane.
Cool.
And then that was back in the days of what was it called? Where you get movies?
Netflix?
Yeah, I guess that wasn't Netflix. Yeah. You get so you could do this is illegal, I suppose. You would get a bunch, like maybe 12 at a time or something, and then burn them and then send them all back. So you'd have movies for the whole time. Because otherwise, you'd get you'd have wait in the mail for them to come, and it would take a while before you're shipping them back, and then they send you the next one, so that way you would get movies in between.
Yeah, that's how you play the system. Get your
Yeah,
movies.
I don't know if you want to air this or share this information. I'll go to jail.
Another trick you could do is just not send them back, and then you mark them. That's what I used to do. Mark them as lost. So
but then there was
we're in this together now.
Right, there was there was always that time though that then you'd have to send back, and then they wouldn't send you more until they received them.
Not to sidetrack. You would go to their website and you could click it missing.
Oh.
And then they just send you a new one.
Oh man.
I think after 5, they cut you off.
Yeah.
But you're given some leeway. Or
Yeah.
if you wanted them to send it before it would get there, you could also do that.
Yeah. And then there were multiple people that were getting movies too, so we'd share, have movie night in the bunkhouse, or
cool.
pass books and movies around, share all of that stuff.
So if somebody has a guitar, they might want to bring it with them.
For sure, yeah. Bring musical instruments. If any hobbies you have or think you might want to have, there's a good chance you'll take it up out there. So that's really, it's fun to have that kind of time. Like, never since in my life have I felt like you just have that time to, discover new hobbies and things and just wander in the woods and not really have a busy schedule.
Sounds heavenly.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why'd you
I'm
leave?
actually going to
Why are
go
you
back.
Yeah. I guess you kind of talked about this. Was it ever scary there?
I don't think so, actually. Like, if you have a really good community of people, even if you're having issues, like, with, say, a pipeline or water, or there's enough people that if they all work well together, it's not scary. There were times when there was a very, bare bones skeleton crew on site. We were like, man, I hope that things don't go wrong here. But I never, besides having that in the back of your head, which I think is good to have in mind, just so you're kind of prepared if something does happen, like, what do I do first? Because your main goal all the time is, like, what's best for the fish? How do if you have an emergency, like, what will you do first? So if you don't have a lot of people on site, coordinating and be thinking about how that would go is important. But I can't remember ever really being scared.
Do you have any, speaking of, being scared or, the stress of the job, any tips for, managing, mental health when you're in a remote location? Anything somebody can kind of do to, I don't know, any ideas?
Take vitamin D.
Okay.
Also, go outside anyway, even if the weather is bad. Especially in Southeast, when it rains all the time, it can be quite a transition from coming from somewhere where rainy days are not the norm. You have a tendency to be like, okay, this is an inside day. Well, eventually, you just have to, put on your rain gear and go outside. It's so good for your mental health. At least mine, I think, even now, what I learned out there, I keep in, use that same thing here. Get out. If you walk in the trees, you're going to feel better. Also, I think for the most part, there's usually this small crew and everybody tends to get along pretty well. I know of a few times where people just didn't do well or get along because they just would go home after work and kind of hide, and that's not good for your mental health either. Socialize at least some.
Yeah. I was going to ask. I mean, some people like to keep to themselves. They do their job, and they go off and kind of do their own thing at night. And some people, always like to be around 2 or 3 people and sharing experiences and stuff. Do you think both kind of people can find a place in a remote hatchery, or do you think it's better for one or the other?
I think it's better for both. I mean, I think both can do well. But it's kind of back to the luck of who you're with and what the atmosphere is like at a hatchery. I feel like I was really lucky. I've also heard of people that go and they just don't find their people. And it's not necessarily a bad experience, but also not, I think it can vary. People's experience will definitely vary by where they are and who is there. But I think if you like to be outside and just, it's like Southeast Alaska is paradise. There's so many amazing things to see and do and experience. And when you're in a remote site, it's amplified because there's just more of it and you're experiencing it, not first surrounded by tourists or a bunch of other people. It's just you. I remember going out in the skiff the first spring I was there, and a pod of orcas coming by fairly close, and a rainbow was behind them. I'm what is happening right now? How am I lucky enough to be here right now? And that happens a lot, I think, when you live there in a place like that.
Yeah, those are all my questions. I guess my final one would be, if this sounds interesting to anybody, do you recommend any university courses or programs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That could help
So
them get there?
where my career has taken me, I feel so fortunate that I came up here in 2006 just to do something for a little while I figured out what to do with my career, and fell absolutely in love with it. Did that for 10 years working for NSRRA, and then was the aquaculture director at the Sitka Sound Science Center for a few years. And now I get to teach that aquaculture, and I've learned a ton about, seaweed and shellfish mariculture, and get to share all these things with students. And so we have online classes if students are interested, and then we offer a semester intensive in all things aquaculture here in Alaska. And so we visit hatcheries, even a remote hatchery, learn all about spawning salmon, gain maritime skills, like learn how to drive boats and tie knots and fix outboards, have a little kelp farm, learn all about oysters. And so you can reach out to me if you want more information on any of these opportunities at abowers4@alaska.edu.
Cool. I'll put a link.
Yes, please do. Yeah, that's, I think, for me, the fall semester, I sort of mirrored it. And one of the things I think a lot about in the activities that we do is like, what do I wish I would have known showing up at Hidden Falls, as a young person, not knowing how to drive a boat or tie knots or anything. So try to have those, basic skills that help students feel comfortable. I would just recommend students, like, even if they don't come to our program and they have like a science background or interest in fisheries, these hatchery organizations are often looking for people. And even if they just want to contact me to find out about opportunities that are already out there, I think do it. I don't think you'll regret it. It's a really, really amazing, life-changing experience to live in some of these places and work with these incredible animals. Like salmon are just the best. So,
for a student who say like strictly like humanities, like art, they like art, fine arts, literature, and they're kind of interested in this. Do you think it's something a student like that could fit into?
They might want to take some classes.
Like
just
basic biology?
more for their resume than anything, and to learn and to find out if it is really something that they want to do. Especially, I think if you're somebody who loves fishing and does spend time outdoors, but that's what you studied as humanities and literature and things, I think you would be a good fit. But otherwise, maybe, come hang out with us for a little while.
We covered a lot today. Angie gave us the inside scoop on what it's like to work and live in a remote Alaskan hatchery, surrounded by nature with free time to devote to new hobbies, boats you can borrow. I heard Angie say it's not for everyone. It depends on the group, and there's lots of physical labor. But it sounds almost dreamlike. I also enjoyed the little tangent on Netflix DVDs and iPods. Back in the day, Netflix used to send movies through the mail. I even have some old ones. I'll put some pictures in the show notes at kelpshow.com. And if anyone found an iPod in a rental car in 2006, now you know where to send it. Hope Angie finds it one day. I'll also put a bunch of pictures of Hidden Falls in the show notes. I visited there this past fall, and it's beautiful. Speaking of shell notes, I'll put Angie's email and some more information about course offerings at UAS Sitka also in the shell notes. Disclaimer, I was one of Angie's students last fall, and I learned a lot in those few months. How to spawn salmon, how to farm seaweed, all sorts of oyster stuff, knots, boats. We even spent like a day learning dead reckoning. That's navigating using pencils and fancy rulers. I'll also add some links and vocab words. We mentioned today ponding, float plane, net pen, NSRRA. We even talked about salmon enhancement. A big thank you to Angie Bowers for being on the show today. I had a lot of fun talking to Angie. And a big special thank you to W for providing the music. Thanks to University of Alaska Southeast Sitka campus. You can find Mariculture Minute on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Substack, at kelpshow.com. We are on Instagram at kelpshow. And I think that's everywhere. Not only everywhere that you can find Mariculture Minute, but like everywhere I think I just listed everywhere on the internet. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Jeremiah Murphy, talking to you from Sitka, Alaska. I hope to talk to you again soon.